Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series of And the Runner-Up Is, where we talk about actresses who may have come close to earning Oscar nominations, but were ultimately overlooked or omitted, or for one reason or another just didn't have the votes to make it into the final lineup, and discussing why they may have deserved to get in and why they ultimately didn't. Each episode has its own theme, presented as a double feature, and this week we are going to be covering two performances from the 40s that didn't earn Oscar nominations. And joining me today to help me break down these fabulous performances is a real favorite of mine. She's joined me on numerous episodes on the main feed over the years and on bonus episodes, but you last heard her on the Best Actress series talking with me about the lineup of 1960, Elizabeth Taylor's famous win for Butterfield 8. She is a very busy woman whose writing has been found in a lot of different places now, as well as her podcasting, Citizen Dame. She's now a member of the Awards Watch family. Welcome back, Karen Peterson.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
You're one of my favorites too, by the way.
Oh, well, I'm glad the feeling is mutual. Nice to see you joining our many friends on the Awards Watch team.
Yeah. It's such a good group, and I've really missed being part of a team of enthusiastic movie lovers, so it's good to be there.
A good word for that group, enthusiastic in many different directions.
So true.
Very passionate. So I always love that. But let's get right into it. So I presented to my patrons here at And the Runner-Up is a list of 15 of the most notable performances of the 40s that weren't nominated, and lots of great choices among this group. So we had Ingrid Bergman in Notorious, Joan Crawford in A Woman's Face, Joan Fontaine in Letter from an Unknown Woman, Judy Garland in Meet Me in St. Louis, Peggy Ann Garner in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Greer Garson in Random Harvest, Veronica Lake in I Married a Witch, Vivian Lee in That Hamilton Woman, Carol Lombard in To Be or Not to Be, Ida Lupino in The Hard Way, Rosalind Russell in His Girl Friday, Moira Shearer in The Red Shoes, Barbara Stanwyck in The Lady Eve, Jean Tierney in The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, and Teresa Wright in Shadow of a Doubt. So, tough competition, but the top vote getters were Rosalind Russell and Barbara Stanwyck. So those are the two we'll be breaking down today. Another one where the choices were pretty obvious from the patrons, including yourself, Karen, because I know that you also voted in this one.
I sure did.
Yes, and I think you voted for Barbara Stanwyck. I could see who votes for who, by the way.
I was wondering if you could see.
Yes. Yes. But third place and putting up a good fight was Ingrid Bergman in Notorious. Also would have been fun to discuss, but yeah. So what do you think of those choices, just like the 15 and the two that we got down to?
I think they're all really great. It was one of those things. It was like sort of a Sophie's choice, you know. It's like, who do I not vote for? But you know, for me, it just doesn't get better there than Barbara Stanwyck. So do love her so much. But yeah, no, I mean, you have so many really, really great performances there, and I think, yeah, Notorious, Bergman in that one is some of these. I think part of what made it so hard is the fact that it's still stunning to me that they weren't nominated.
I know. You look at this list and you're like, oh my God, these are like the 15 best actress nominees of the 40s, but actually none of them were even nominated. So
right. Yeah, and it's wild.
Yeah, well, before we discuss these two, I just wanted to hear your overall thoughts on maybe just this era of film and your relationship with the golden age of Hollywood, specifically, you know, the 40s, and especially, you know, women in film and actresses of this era, wherever you want to go with it.
Oh, gosh, that is very broad.
I know it's a very broad question.
But I love it. It's a good question, too. I think what's interesting about the 40s is that you have I mean, obviously you have this in every decade, a really wide range of films and emerging talents, which you really get with some actresses in this era who are really starting to come into their own, really becoming big stars at the time. And what's interesting is, I mean, this is right in the middle of the Hays Code is keeping people from being really free to talk about things, and that's reflected in the films. But it's always interesting to me when you get to see the ones where the filmmakers who are able to kind of not necessarily skirt around the code or maybe, I mean, maybe a little bit of that, and just kind of getting things past censors. Preston Sturges is a big one for that.
Right.
And so it's interesting. It like you really do have this. You have a lot of films that are very much, it's during the war and then post-war themes. A lot of kind of coming home war stories, but you also have a lot of very traditional values in families, close families. But this is also the rise of the screwball comedy, where women very much get to be on the same playing field with their male counterparts. And for me, those are my favorite things to watch from this time, and just really getting to see women go toe to toe with the men and just be amazing, which is what you especially get to see in the two we're going to talk about today.
Very much so. Yeah. I think this is a really fun decade for women in film. I really love so many performances from this era. A lot of great winners, even from the Best Actress winners like Joan Crawford and Mildred Pierce, Ingrid Bergman in Gaslight, Olivia de Havilland in The Heiress, and plenty of those losing performances like, Celia Johnson in Brief Encounter, obviously, Barbara Stanwyck in Double Indemnity, Jean Tierney in Leave Her to Heaven. Oh my God. All the Bette Davis performances, pretty much, So just to speak in general terms, I do like how this decade really did give rise to film noir and femme fatales and complicated women, and like seeing directors and writers, like you said, working within the studio system and the Hays Code and going right up to the line of what's allowed to be depicted, and sometimes maybe subverting a little bit. And I definitely think both of the roles we'll be talking about today, yes, they're in screwball comedies, so there is an inherent kind of goofiness to them maybe at times, but as characters, I think they're so dynamic and fascinating and given the room to figure out what they want in life. And I just kind of appreciate these films and a lot of films from this era with women in the lead or co-leading in these cases that really just allow women to explore those themes of like professional life, personal life, and like taking that exploration sort of pretty seriously, I would say. So yes, very excited to talk about these, especially with how they really complement each other so well. And I kind of think both of these actresses fit a certain archetype that I personally really respond to. So yeah, shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
All right, well, we are starting off with Rosalind Russell in His Girl Friday.
I want to go someplace where I can be a woman.
You mean be a traitor?
A traitor? A traitor to what?
A traitor to journalism. You're a journalist, Hildy.
A journalist? Now, what does that mean? Peeking through keyholes, chasing after fire engines, waking people up in the middle of the night to ask them if Hitler's going to start another war, stealing pictures off old ladies? I know all about reporters, Walter. A lot of dampy Budinskis running around without a nickel in their pockets, and for what? So a million hired girls, motormen's wives will know what's going on? Why, Oh, what's the use?
So Rosalind Russell, someone we covered pretty extensively on the Best Actress series. She was nominated 4 times, and she started her run just a few years after this, and it kind of ended with Auntie Mame. Sadly, she didn't ever win an Oscar, although she did win the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 1973 for her humanitarian work. But going into His Girl Friday, she had done a lot of work in what they call lady roles, where she didn't really get to have fun very much, basically. So that started to change with The Women in 1939, which cast her in a much more comedic light. For His Girl Friday, though, she was not the first person that the director Howard Hawks wanted, and also, she found out about that after she had been cast, and she was not pleased, but the list was pretty much all the big names of the time: Katharine Hepburn, Irene Dunne, Claudette Colbert, Jean Arthur, Margaret Sullivan, and Ginger Rogers, and they all either turned it down or couldn't do it, so she was like the, 7th or 8th choice, basically, and she apparently got her revenge, in a way, by showing up to Howard Hawks' office in wet hair, and it was just like very confrontational and directly confronted him about it. Either way, they kind of worked it out, but I think that brassiness, I guess you could say, proved that she was probably right for the part. So His Girl Friday, screwball comedy based on the play The Front Page, And it actually recast the play with one of the lead roles being a woman here, as opposed to having it be two men, and making some changes to the story, obviously. But the film is set in the fast-paced world of a Chicago newspaper where the editor, Walter Burns, played by Cary Grant, is alarmed when his ex-wife and fellow journalist Hildy Johnson, Rosalind Russell, reveals that she plans on marrying her fiancé and moving to the suburbs to be a housewife. And he convinces her to take on one last story, which involves this local convict who's about to be executed for killing a policeman. So she agrees, and as she's reporting on the story, she finds out that Walter's been messing with her fiancé and landing him in jail for various violations that are all Walter's doing. And as the story kind of goes on that Hildy's working on starts to escalate, she realizes she may not actually want to leave her life as a professional after all. So let's talk His Girl Friday, Karen. This is a classic and a movie I love and I know you love. Tell me your thoughts just on Rosalind Russell, if you have any relationship with her as an actress, and this movie and her performance.
I mean, I love Rosalind Russell. She's amazing. She's one of the greats. And she is one that I think, how did she never win an Oscar? 4 nominations. She should have had more, I think. But how, how did she never win? But it's also, I think, a reminder that it's okay for people not to win. They still exist. Their movies still exist. It can make us sad. It's a lot.
You mean
we're
the
allowed to be
Oscars aren't
upset
everything?
about it.
Oh my gosh.
but it's not the end all be all. It's a fun game,
Yeah,
but it doesn't
right.
make or break someone's legacy. And I think that's what we see with people like Roz Russell, who still had an incredible legacy and left us with so many incredible, memorable roles, and really was inspirational. And I think His Girl Friday was probably the first film of hers that I ever saw. I'm pretty sure, which I mean, let's be honest, I watched it originally for Cary Grant, but
Sure.
but very quickly, as soon as she comes on stage, or on screen, it's all about her. She's so good. She's so funny. The two of them together just have, I mean, Cary Grant could have chemistry with pretty much anybody, and probably so could she. But the two of them together just are so electric, and this very fast dialogue, often over each other. It's one of the earliest films where the actors are speaking over each other, and it works, and we don't hear everything. I've watched this movie with closed captions multiple times, and I still don't catch everything that they say because it's so rapid fire and this crisp, awesome dialogue. And that's part of why she just stands out to me so well, is that she's able to do this and it's believable. And you totally are with her as this, this newspaper woman. He calls her a newspaper man, which, I mean, it's a boys' club, and she and she fits into that totally well. And I think knowing that she's playing a role that was originally a male role, I think it does add a little bit to it, because you really get this sense for her that she has been able to hold her own in a man's world, and that is significant. It's not just, they gender swapped it and made it a girl and everything's fine. It's there's a lot of layers to just even that fact and knowing it. And she sells it. She's so convincing, as this specific woman would be able to be part of that world and not get eaten alive by it.
Yeah, very well said. She's a shark, and she knows what she's doing. I'm such a big fan of Roz. I love her gusto. I love her sharpness, her line delivery, her comedic timing. It's like, she is one of those top tier comedic actresses for me, especially of this era, with like Auntie Mame being like the ultimate and just like total diva excellence.
Yes.
Just totally in command of her instrument, I guess you could say. And I love watching her in this era like this, and The Women, and My Sister Eileen. I feel like she really, at this point in her career, really has something to prove. And she is very hungry, I think, to show her chops. That, like, she has what it takes to be alongside people like Katharine Hepburn and Irene Dunne and Jean Arthur. And it's not like a Star is Born moment necessarily here, but it really feels like a real leveling up moment for her in her career.
Was this, I'm trying to remember, I might be mixing up some stories, but was this the movie where Katharine Hepburn was gonna do it, but she turned it down. And then when she found out Cary Grant was in it, then she was like upset that she had turned it down. Was it this
Uh,
one?
I don't remember reading that from
Okay, I can't
my
remember,
research of this,
but yeah, when her competition is Katharine Hepburn, and she manages to not make you wish that you were watching Katharine Hepburn in the role,
yeah,
you know?
I know. That's saying something. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's such a fun performance, so fun to watch and so skillful. I made a joke in my review on Letterboxd whenever I watched this again a few years ago, where I said that like both her and Cary Grant deserve like special Oscars just for the stamina of delivering these
Yes.
lines at such a lightning speed, like double speed almost. Like it seems like they're in fast forward.
Aaron Sorkin wishes he could write dialogue like this, and every actor
Hmm.
who's been in an Aaron Sorkin movie wishes they could do this.
Yeah, this is the ideal, right?
Mhm.
It's just so unbelievably fast at times that I do feel like it's actually so rewatchable because you do pick up on lines that you probably missed on the first go just with how dense it is. But it is so
Yeah.
rewarding in that way. And I think she fully nails it. There's never a doubt in my mind that she is this person through and through. Like all those things I said before, sharp and funny and quick, all that stuff. And I think she also really inhabits that kind of working woman at this time who maybe we didn't always get to see in film, certainly like in screwball comedies like this, but just like working women who were damn good at their jobs and being given the space to prove why they were good at their jobs and how, you know, living a life of being a housewife just isn't for her and that there's no judgment on that. Like that's okay.
Mhm.
I feel like, generally speaking, that did start to go away in the post-war era, later in the decade, where things just kind of became more conservative and traditional values and all that. But she really inhabits that role so naturally and gets to be as funny as Cary Grant, if not funnier. And I heard she actually hired like a script writer to help punch up some of her dialogue. And I think that really
Yeah.
helps with the balance, you know?
It does. It does. And you get the sense watching it that, I mean, Roz for sure, but as Hildy, the character of Hildy, she's pretty much the only person that could really match wits with Cary Grant's character
Yeah.
because he is so three steps ahead of everybody all the time because he has to be, but she's right there with them. And that's why they're so drawn to each other. And that's why it's so fun to watch the two of them play off of each other.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I love that she just does get to have fun and get those punchline moments. And yes, a lot of it is like reacting to his nonsense, but it's not like she's just cast in the role of the uptight partner or like the nag or anything, you know, two-dimensional. Again, very
Yeah.
well rounded
Well, and she's
in that
also
way.
not just calling him out on his crap. She's also
Hmm.
she's playing it against him too. Like
Yeah.
she's trying to undercut him. She's trying to, you know, she's trying
Outwit.
to play his
Yeah.
own game right back with him. So
Yes. Yes. And they are very evenly matched.
Mhm.
What is interesting is, you know, because I have seen this quite a few times over the years, but focusing on her performance for this time, it's really interesting to watch her in the very beginning as she is entering the newsroom. And you can kind of see in her eyes, like, she does appreciate her new fiance, Bruce, and his kind of like corn fed sort of simplicity in a way, especially compared to Walter, even though, you know, you can sort of sense over time that maybe she will grow tired of Bruce, you know, pretty quickly because he just can't keep up. But it is just kind of interesting to watch her try to like mold herself into that, like, yeah, I've made peace with my choice to just try to be the traditional wife now. And it's a little more awkward and not as fun to watch compared to when she just gets right into it with Cary Grant.
Well, and that's the thing. Has she really made peace with it, or has she told herself that she's made peace with it? Because
Exactly.
Hildy has no reason to go see Walter. She doesn't owe him anything. She does not need to go
Hmm.
tell him, hey, I'm getting married. They're divorced. They've been divorced. She owes him nothing, and she has nothing that she needs to get from him.
Yeah.
She goes, I think, because she's hoping that he will talk her out of it. So I don't
Hmm.
think, to me, I think she's convinced herself that she's at peace with it and that she's going to do this and
Right.
she's happy with it. But even from the beginning, we can see that's not really what's going on.
No, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that is the brilliance of her performance, I think, is that you can immediately get a sense of who this woman is and what her values
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
I just love those little sly exchanges between her and Walter. It really gives you a sense of history between them and
Mhm.
like a shared language that no one else in the world has. She doesn't have this with anyone else. But at the same time, you could see how this constant like back and forth could eventually wear you down to the point of getting divorced.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. It
So
would
it's
get
like it's that
exhausting.
that fine line between like love and hate, essentially.
Mhm. Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. And I do love how immediately it becomes quicker when it is the two of them talking. And she has this very smart, like jaded sensibility that's so cool because of how smooth she is. Like how there's no word out of place just to speak
Mhm.
to her delivery and the dialogue. And every jab he makes at her, she gives it right back to him. I love the line where she says, "You're wonderful in a loathsome sort of way."
Yes, yeah. And that's it's that banter that really makes this such a great example of a screwball comedy. Because again, they are very evenly matched, but also there's so much love behind those barbs.
Exactly.
There's a lot of history. Obviously, they needed to separate for a while and they needed to get divorced, or at least they felt like they needed to, and that was the answer for them. But
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that they stopped loving each other ever. And you can really see that, like as they're needling each other, especially him, but even her when she's dishing it right back. It's and when she's just like reading, when she's like, I know what he's gonna do, and she's trying to stay
Hmm.
ahead of him. And as he's setting up Bruce or trying to get her to trying to manipulate her in different ways. But there's this almost this admiration and affection as she's calling out all the things that he's doing.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch. I'm always on her side whenever she's making those arguments. And I
Yes.
think to a certain respect the film is. Maybe I'm just projecting, I don't know, but it does feel like it is taking her more seriously between the two of them.
Yes. No, I totally agree with you. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And when she does end up agreeing to write this one last story about this guy who's going to be executed, I like how it is kind of arranged that like this is only going to be after Walter agrees to sign up for one of Bruce's life insurance policies so he can get like a sweet commission on it. Again, she's just such a great sort of wheeler and dealer and just putting it right back in his face. And you could see pretty immediately that she loves this too much to really give it up,
Mhm.
and just her playfulness with like bribing the warden to get in to interview this guy. And then when she interviews him, really kind of switching up her tone and sort of finessing this information out of him in a very smooth way about like what exactly happened with the shooting. It's just fun to watch people who are good at their jobs. And I think this is a
Yeah.
good example of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the things that makes this such a great performance too, because
Mm,
it could be very easy to just make this a romantic, funny screwball comedy about these two people who kind of fell out of love, but now they're back together.
yeah.
But what they have is that's going on while there is a very serious crime
Yeah.
and there's a very serious political situation unfolding, and being able to balance those two. I mean, it's a mark of great storytelling too, but really it's a really wonderful performance from Rosalind Russell, because she's able to balance those different tone shifts and the what's needed from her in with one conversation to another, and she does that so well and so seamlessly that
Hmm.
it's a performance that I think has so much depth and nuance that kind of gets overlooked sometimes.
Thank you for listening to this preview of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup is and become a patron. Only $3 a month will get you access to bonus episodes and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.